Welcome to Guests and Gusto, SCAD's virtual series of conversations and digital content with the creators and innovators who are remaking culture. My name's Carl Rouse. I'm the Associate Dean of the School of Entertainment Arts here at SCAD, and today we're joined by costume designer Ane Crabtree. Anne made an immediate and lasting impression when she created the look for the pilot of The Sopranos on HBO. She's since gone on to style shows including Westworld and The Handmaid's Tale, receiving 2 Emmy nominations, and in 2018, a Costume Designers Guild Award. She's currently working on The Kids' Exquisite Follies, a futuristic Afro-punk steampunk musical, as well as the much anticipated Apple project Ray James. And it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Carl. Thanks for having me. I love SCAD.
Well, we love you. And you was here with us in 2018, so not so long ago, for dressing for dystopia at SCAD Fash.
Oh my God, yes, I was. It feels like yesterday, and that sort of put me in a very cool place for getting my work in other museums. So SCAD has been bringing me up for a few years now. Thank you, SCAD. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being back here with us. And to everyone watching at home, Anne will be taking questions a little bit later, so be sure to use the Q&A. But for right now, I want to introduce Ane Crabtree, who's going to walk us through some of her work.
All right. This will be a trip down memory lane. Okay. So some of you have seen these before, maybe even at Dressing for Dystopia. This is all of my sketches are very fast because in the land of television, we don't have a ton of time to do proper sketches. This is my excuse, my bad excuse. So this was the first sketch of the dress that Lizzie Moss and everybody wore. You can see that I was creating an obi around the waist because handmaids are there to hopefully have babies. And the arm guards that they wore when they were outside of the house. That's the left side. That's actually the fabric. I'm wearing the same color. That's so strange. And on the right was the first idea of the cloak that they wear when they're outside. As you can see, I was going to have a whole different kind of headgear or wings, and even a different dress here in the front.
Now, when you say you sketch fast, how fast are we talking about? How quickly did you come up with this?
I mean, the one on the left looks like a child's drawing. My poor tailors are like, what does this line mean? So when I sketch fast, listen, ideally, I try to do sketches, we get the script, I read it once through for the whole of the story, and then I go back and really read each character's part over and over and over, and then start sketching. And, ideally, these sketches will be done a week before, if I'm lucky, sometimes the night before, and on many occasions, they have to be done sort of minutes before. Especially if there's changes to the idea. So fast. Yeah. Very fast. Yeah. And then the next slide. So, wow. So this was, when did I think we started prepping. I always get this wrong. I think it was 2016. We started prepping the pilot for The Handmaid's Tale, and it came out in 2017. I did the first season, second season. So this is Lizzie walking through beautiful Canada. Man, we spent so much time. This is the neighborhood where the commander's house was. Spent a lot of time in that house. Beautiful place. And below is the two going shopping at Fishes and Loaves. It's been a while. What happens is you go on to a project, and I've been on 2 or 3 since this one, and you forget everything, only so that you can keep everything in your mind for the next one. Mm-hmm. But these guys are shopping at Fishes and Loaves, which is a very minimalist, all organic grocery store of Gilead. And the next slide, let's see. Wow. So yeah, the top, for you Handmaids fans, you'll remember Madeline Brewer in the pilot. And she was surrounded by all the handmaids who were sort of scorning her for, I think, having sex in high school. She was a bit of a loose girl. And then below is Lizzie and, oh man, I'm forgetting her name, which is horrible. Alexis Bledel, there it is, at a, I think, birthing. Eva Carradine was having her sort of commander's wife's birth, which is a fake birth, and Madeline Brewer up top was going to have the baby. So that's those two sort of commiserating secretly at that. And the next.
And can you tell us about the color? Why this particular choice of red? Where did that come from?
Absolutely. So this red, you know, Margaret Atwood wrote this in '85, and so many things were happening, so many things that may or may not parallel what's happening today. She had a very specific thing in her mind. You know, it's funny, I love Margaret Atwood and respect her 100%, maybe 200%. I've actually never asked her what red she thought of when she was writing it. I should have, because she's the reason. Me falling in love with the book is the reason I did this project. And also me falling in love with the film, which was produced by Daniel Wilson, is another reason why I'm a part of this. While we were looking at reds, red is a really difficult color in cinema. You can go horribly wrong with it, and it can be the thing that pulls all the attention to the frame, which we don't want in a story, because honestly, it's not about the costumes when you're telling a story. You want it to be riveting. You want, you being me, as I read it, I knew that, you know, it's called The Handmaid's Tale. It's not called The Commander's Wife's Tale or The Ant's Tale. I knew that it had to be strong enough to be riveting in a bleak, dystopic society, a kind of gray world. And then also very important was that we were going to have actors of every race, every skin tone. And I really labored over what color red it was going to be. I talked with Reed Morano and Julie, the production designer, and there was a million reds shown. I think Reed showed a picture of red maple leaves. And that was the color red, but ultimately the color became the color of blood. And that is a little secret that I use, which is not a secret really in the design world and the art world. If you go towards nature to find your color, especially when creating a world and creating a color that many people will wear, rather than hitting yourself in the head trying to find the right color for each skin tone, if you go toward nature, it will always be the right color. So this really is the color of blood. And then it just made sense, exactly, Carl, it just made sense mentally, psychologically, that it would be blood, because long story short, you know, childbirth is having a low point in future world of Gilead. And so these handmaids are the only ones who are able to have their menses. So there's the long story short of that one.
That's fascinating though, yeah.
Yeah, I think back to all of the mental wrinkles, the brain wrinkles, you know, that I've gained from this job, and it really was a puzzle and a half.
At what point did you know? I mean, you talked about going to the nature colors. At what point did you make a discovery like that? Was that just through experimentation?
Yes and no. So everything is through experimentation, but often, you know, I remember Reed, we had little squares of red that we kept putting up to people's skin tones. We sent the fabric to Lizzie, who looked at it. You know, her thing was, I want something that I can move around in, that I'm not going to be aware of, because the subject matter is so heavy and so psychological and dramatic that she didn't want to think. I mean, no actor wants to think about what they're wearing. So aside from the color, it was how to make something fluid that would flow beautifully, The color should be one that evokes emotion and a kind of poignancy and visual poetry. And so really truthfully, a lot of that comes in the fittings. You know, you have all of these beautiful women, Samira and Alexis there. You see, it's the exact same thing on two different skin tones, very different skin tones, and it looks still beautiful and still individual. The other individual thing that happened during the fittings is how to control the waist of the handmaids. And that was my little addition to the story that Margaret Atwood and Bruce Miller were telling. And so on Samira, on the left, she's fuller figured up top and smaller hips on the bottom. And so that is a kind of proper obi shape that kind of came, obviously, not obviously, I'm half Okinawan, my mother's Japanese, and I've always loved that historical garment that controls the waist, an obi. And it's also a kind of very cool reimagining of, let's say, Halston or Jeffrey Bean, this kind of seamed obi from that time, 70s, 80s. That's on Samira because she's fuller figured up top, whereas Alexis is smaller up top, still shapely with hips. And so we had a corset on the right for women who were smaller up top. And that was a kind of way to introduce the handmaids as individuals. Everybody's not in the exact same thing. And to physically actually let the camera zoom in and see their shape, even in a wide, 100 handmaids, you would see who's pregnant and who's not. And then it's a very long story, Carl, but I had to think about things as a commander. If a commander created this world, and the very important element was to see and to control women's bodies, to see who are pregnant, you'd want to see it as an army of women from a wide shot or from a large outside environment that you're controlling via cameras or via rooftop. And so, yeah. And also I wanted to really, in reality, create a garment where a commander wouldn't think about these handmaids. They would say, it's a prison uniform. So they get one dress for the whole of the season, through summer and through winter. And we just keep adding things on top and taking them away. Same thing with pregnancy. If one gets pregnant, the obi has to come off and the corset has to come off, and they start to bloom, as it were. Yeah. So everything's about control.
Fantastic.
Yeah, this is awesome. This very top photo is the first day of shooting. I'll never forget it. It was huge, to put it lightly. And it was one of those moments where I do this all the time. I've done it on The Handmaid's Tale. I've done it on Westworld. I've done it recently with a show that I'm working on for Apple. I don't want to know the largesse of what we have to do. I want to know the base idea. But if you tell me numbers, I'll freak out and say, oh my God, I don't know if we can handle it. So that happened on The Handmaid's Tale, because of whatever location, availability, or weather, which we had to fight a lot in Toronto. We had to shoot this on day one. We had to show the whole of Gilead. Actually, I'm lying. So the little sneaky thing that happens in TV land is they say, for instance, oh, the first day of shooting will be September 1st. No problem. But then they always say, oh, we're going to shoot a few days earlier or the day before. We're going to do the pre-shoot. So we did a pre-shoot, which is good for experience for everybody, with just Lizzie and Otif and Fagbenle and their child. I'm forgetting her name right now. But, we just shot them in an interior scene and it wasn't so crazy. So this was the second day with hundreds of handmaids, Gilead soldiers. And I remember that we were just like machines getting it done. We were making all the clothes. We were dyeing stuff. We were aging it. We were painting things. And by hook or by crook, we just held our breath, clenched our teeth, and came to set. And around lunchtime, which you'll see this coming up, we all kind of finally breathed, took a deep breath and said, oh my God, we've done it. We've done the whole of Gilead on day 2.
And how big would your team be? How many people was you working with to achieve that?
You know what? Wow, look at that. So that's real snow. It's really that cold in Toronto. The team can be, anywhere from 18 every day, which includes people at the ranch, at the design studio, who are tailors and ager dyers and people shopping for things, for fabrics. 18, including those guys, and then everybody on set. On a big day where there's lots and lots of people, it can be up to 30. I've had 40, it really depends. You just keep adding people. On a cold day, you need even more because you need to, wrap people in blankets and coats and in between the shots. Mm-hmm. Both of those days were very cold. Wow. It's very macabre. So yeah, all of these, it's very interesting. The beautiful thing about The Handmaid's Tale is that they were very, very respectful in showing costumes. Not every show does that. And I think the way things unfolded, none of us really realized, even though the book, the novel, has been around and has had many iterations since '85, it really was and is a new way of storytelling. And so the beautiful thing about that is, the DP was very excited and wanted to show everything, them putting on the ritual of getting dressed. You see in the top right, the way that the handmaids wore their cloaks, their hoods differently. And then I'm seeing mistakes, which I'm not going to say.
Go on, tell us a mistake.
This is the problem with being Ane Crabtree. Well, on the left. I mean, I don't know if this was the pilot or number 2. I love the dress. I think it's the pilot because I made that dress that Serena Joy is wearing as a kind of nod to, what's her name? Beautiful actress in Blade Runner. Sean Young. I gotta get my glasses for this, okay? Oh yeah, that's the one. I love that. And so that was my little nod to Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, future dystopia. But, and she looks good. Lizzie always looks good because Lizzie always looks real. She adds a beautiful selfness to the costume. She embodies it in such a way. So the thing that, I was like ninja Nazi on set. I'm a designer who is on set all the time, which means I never sleep because we prep early in the morning, we go to set, and we try to come back fast so we can start to build clothes for the next day. I like to stay on set too, as well as build the clothes. And so one thing that I insisted, and I did this at the Smithsonian as well, the hood on Lizzie's cloak, I decided should be more open to God. And so if you look at Lizzie, maybe not in this shot, it should be more sort of in the way, I'm Episcopalian and Buddhist, but like in the way that certain folks in the South pray like this is how I wanted her hood to be. As a kind of memento to those folks. So I'm a little mad, but I'll get over it. Okay, so these photos, let me just move this. It's so crazy to see these photos, guys, I have to tell you, because I am so attached to every project. Certainly this one, because I think most costume designers are this way. I think we can't help it as creative creatures, but I definitely just work when I'm working. And so what it means is you're eating, breathing, sleeping. Man, I make fun of myself, but it's real. I call myself a method designer. I have to, as you can see on the far right, I have to have everything on to experience it. So the photo on the far right is a muslin. So that's why it's pink. And it's been dyed a certain color. And I'm just trying different shapes. I remember something about this prep was so nuts. We had to move offices after like a week or two, and we had to travel. You know, nowadays, actors, everybody is from all over around the world, just like you, Carl. And,
Indeed.
you know, we have to travel to wherever the actors are. And so in The Handmaid's Tale, we had to travel quickly to go see Lizzie, where she was. Joe Fiennes is in England, so is Otifa Fenley. And so we had to quickly make muslins and templates for actors even before they were fully formed in my brain. So this is very fast work. That muslin was, it's funny, this picture. So this is Ane Crabtree, never changing, okay? That scarf on my head I've had for a million years. And I've kept it because it's the perfect square that equals a triangle. Many of you who wear scarves know that when you put scarves on your head, often the triangle doesn't match perfectly. I've kept this one. It's a fabric that I loved. I mean, maybe 15, maybe 20 years. That scarf on my head, I said, this is the perfect scarf for the Martha. So that became Rita and all of the Martha scarves. I'm still wearing, I think, overalls under that beautiful dress. I think I just held it up to take a picture of it. Those boots in the center, the black and white, is me on my lunch hour, you know, staring at my own boots saying, these are going to be the shoes for The Handmaid's Tale. And these leather gaiters are going to be what gets them through the winter. And it'll be a kind of militaristic touch for a shoe that can last forever. So they don't have to go into different shoes for summer, you know, through winter. And then on the left, I adore this photo because, so I'm always documenting my work. And I think most of us do that now because of Instagram. And I tell, you know, everybody, kids, students, always document your work, but don't just take photos of a wide shot and you can't really see what things are. Take the details, take the things that really, truly excite you, or that it's kind of like an aha moment. Yeah. These shoes were me looking down and it was that, like, that's going to be the thing. These girls, these handmaids, these brilliant, beautiful extras, and men and women, it was hotter than Hades that day, okay? It was over 100 degrees, and I am the genius who said, we must have wool gabardine for the capes. Because in my mind, if you're going to use something that's all weather, it should be lightweight wool. Yeah. So thank God the dresses weren't. But these are the poor extras who are like, nighty night, after waking up in the dark, getting dressed, and not really being allowed to take off all their accoutrements because there's too many things, and all new. It's day 2. And, you know, me and like 3 other people knew what the pieces were. Nobody else. The ADs don't know. My team had just kind of swallowed the information. I had to create not only the kind of costume dogma as to how these things were worn, but also I decided, because I'm crazy, that I would create the whole Latin based language for what each of these things are called, and send it off to Bruce Miller and say, look, we can't say, bring on the bonnets, you know, after lunch to get the next shot, because A, they're not called bonnets, and B, there's too many different layers and accoutrements. So I created a whole language. Nobody wore it, nobody used it in the end, but I felt satisfied that I was that thorough. So
well, you created an entire world there in that way, didn't you? You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
A question though about your documentation. You talk about photographs. Do you ever just carry sketchbooks around with you? Do you sketch as you move around, or is it all photographs for you?
You know, I have carried a sketchbook. So many of you know, some of you don't, that I never studied costume design. I studied painting. I was an art major. And so, yeah, I always carry a sketchbook around. But the sad thing, I have one now, I'm laughing, on my table with nothing in it, okay? Because at a TV's pace, like the intention is always, oh my gosh, I'm gonna create this beautiful palette and then we can use it for the behind the scenes footage. It does not happen, okay? Because you are dressing the world, you're coming over here, you're calling somebody in the next country that you have to go to for a fitting, and there's the beautiful sketchbook untouched. So I do sketch. The stupid thing is I sketch on napkins from coffee shops. I sketch on the back of scripts because we're nomads. We're racing at the speed of sound from set to fabric store to the next location to whatever fittings. And so I learned over the years, if I just start sketching on the back of the scripts or in between the pages or near the scene number, it's much easier to talk to Bruce Miller or to the next director about it. So I hope to get better about that, Carl.
Well, it sounds good to me. What do we have here?
What do we have? So on the left is another, look, it's drawn on top of a photo. This is Ane Crabtree being horrible. Wrong costume design 101, see Ane Crabtree. But it works, okay? Because when you have a nanosecond to sell something to a director, to a producer, this is how you do it. You know, I can't say, hey, hang tight for half an hour while I make the perfect fashion sketch. They ain't gonna wait, okay? So I drew it on top of an existing body. And this was an idea for an early Handmaid's Tale dress. Isn't that interesting? I was gonna make it really without shape. And probably actors want more shape, right? For when they're not wearing the obi. And I'm certain that someone talked me into, you know, adding seams. And then on the right, yeah, it's another idea for the obi. It's so interesting. That might be a nightgown. I can't remember. It's so early that I want to say it's an early Handmaid's Tale dress. And then on the left, let's see. My God, I'm so glad these exist, these photos. Because, you know, you don't document everything. On the left is a photo that I took in our space because often the writers, the directors, the producers, they're all in different places. Often the main producers, like a Bruce Miller, they are in Los Angeles writing, right? And we're in, let's say, Toronto. And so I'm sending photos like 24/7, a barrage of ideas. So this one was, we were getting ready to go see Serena Joy, Yvonne Strahovski, where she was doing another film in somewhere in a beautiful wild area, wilderness outside of Montreal. And so I'm showing, oddly, this light color of the fabric. I thought I wanted to do two-tone and then I changed my mind, thank God, and made it on the dark teal side until later. And we know that story. But yeah, this is showing everything early on to Reed Morano and Bruce Miller. Yeah, and Warren Lewis.
What's that conversation like? I mean, as well as the visual, how's that conversation play out?
That conversation, you want the real story, Carl? This is the real.
Oh, I do. Right? That's what I want.
So the real talk is this. I have a feeling, like my grandfather said I could sell anything because, but the thing is, I really believe what I'm selling. So I was like the best Girl Scout cookie salesman. And I remember my grandfather was so proud, and I'd forgotten this, that he was a salesman. And he was like, I think you need to go into sales because you could sell the Brooklyn Bridge. And so in a way, a costume designer, I mean, maybe that should be embarrassing to me, but we're salesmen. We sell ideas. I'm like, I remember many times, like Mimi Leader, who is a dear sister of mine, we were meeting Steven Spielberg, right? And I was terrified. And it was me, a production designer, and Mimi. And come on, it's Steven Spielberg. Like I was still like youngish in my career. And Mimi was like, you are my weapon. in the room because you are such a salesperson. And I think what happens is that conversation you're asking about is, it's like a very fine line between terror and crazy straight up audacity, maybe from being Southern and being this ghetto girl, right? I'm like, oh my God, I can't fail. So I just start like doing my thing. But the strange, I call it going to church. And I did this with Apple, and the guy from Apple, when I saw him later, was like, hey, I remember what you said, you know, and it's like a weird out of body thing where, but it's not put on and it's not fake. It's absolutely coming from a very deep, real place.
Very authentic.
It's authentic because if you get a script and you believe the words and you're moved by them, as an artist, you really want to take those words and make something tangible out of them. And you want to believe those characters. And so that's how I work. And so when I'm talking about it, I want you to feel the way I feel. And you know, some people would call that manipulation. Some people would call that poetry. And you could just decide what it is. But I don't sell anything that I don't believe in. Okay, I'm that Mary Kay lady. I'm serious though. Like I sell ideas. I mean, that's what we do. Yeah.
Fantastic.
It sounds so fake, but it's real.
No, not at all. I mean, a big thing we teach here at SCAD is the idea of storytelling. You know, whatever your discipline, wherever you're coming from, how do you sell your story? How do you tell that story? So I think that's incredibly helpful to hear. Absolutely. It's
really real. And I think it's something that, you know, I mean, I love SCAD students. I know they know, but I hope all students get that, because it's a kind of extra sensory gift that a lot of people don't have in the industry. They expect someone else to tell the story, or they expect someone else to do the work for them. And I think if you're eating a meal and it happens to be visual, it better be the best, most satisfying, delicious meal you've ever had. Otherwise, you're not full. Otherwise, you're like, why did I have that? I don't even care about it. So I think if you approach that creatively, you will always be satiated.
Do you have a top tip though? Do you have a top tip? Like if you had a student in front of you right now, how would you get them to that place, do you think?
What I always tell students is, it's so funny because you said authentic. I always tell students and people, if I can help them at all, you have to feel real about whatever it is you're doing, or else it's not really worth it. And so I think what I tell them, this is going to feel a little corny, Carl, but I want you to do it with me. Everybody out there, I want you to do it with me. What I tell people is, if you're not sure, so if you have like an A, B, if you have these photos in front of you, right? A, B, C, or D, and they're choices for tomorrow morning, and you know that you have a nanosecond to get your point across, to share an idea and to not sound like an imbecile. What I do is literally, do this with me. I close my eyes, and I close my eyes a lot. And people are like, why is she asleep? I'm talking to her. And you know what's funny? I read that David Lynch does this. I read that so many artists do this. They close their eyes to see, to really see, Carl Rouse.
I'm doing it.
What it is you want to see in the picture, okay? And so if you're closing your eyes, you immediately can connect with what the true answer is. If you have a puzzle out of 4 drawings, which is the right drawing for a character, you close your eyes, the answer is immediate, at least for me. You know, and it's never wrong. And usually it's the first thing that you've drawn, or your first thing that you've created, or the first color that you chose.
There's something very meditative about it though as well, isn't there? About closing down the other stimuli. It's quite a pleasant place to be, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, you put it the right way. I have a hard time succinctly saying, I'm like, close your eyes, okay? Close them. But it is meditative. And you know what's funny? I used to feel so embarrassed about that, because I was like, I got to go over here and close my eyes. But now I just tell people, like, I know this sounds crazy, but do this. And it's real. It's real and it works. And it is meditative, and it's being unafraid and confident of what your inner voice knows. And on that note, this is going to sound even crazier, but all my SCAD kids know that I speak the truth. That is, everything is intuitive. Everything that is pure and beautiful and worth creating is here. And so I especially am just a vessel. You know, I don't have all the answers. They come from other sources, ancestors, God, whoever you believe in. The absolute creative truth is what fills you to be able to do this work. So you have to trust it and be kind of like, okay, sounds cuckoo, but I'm gonna do it. Because I keep getting hired for these crazy notions that are just, you know, second nature for me. And it's really just about being honest about using whatever's here to gain a certain elevation creatively, intellectually.
That's beautiful, though.
I'm selling it, Carl. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not at all.
It's working. It's working. I'm signing up. I'm with you.
You were already,
what have we got?
Carl. All right.
They've changed the image for us. What have we got now?
You know what? They're trying to keep us on track, Carl. All right. So the top, I love this. I love this dress. So these are two great moments in cinematic splendor. I'm just kidding. The top one is my girl Serena Joy in a beautiful, beautiful dress that is so graceful. She's still in control, as you can see, even though her husband is in a stronger black and white palette. I love it because it's near couture up top. It's telling a quiet story. She's standing by the bed of her baby to be through Lizzie Moss, through the Handmaid, and she's saying, this is how I want this picture to be. Are you listening? In my beautiful dress. Below is Serena Joy for real, in a very beat up thrift store sweater that I found. I don't even know if they still have this sweater, but it was like $5, okay? From Value Village. Value Village, I love you. From Toronto, I miss them. But they had that, it was already that color, it was already kind of pilled, and it showed a real person. That same person is up in the top photo.
Yeah.
It's what we wear to command something, right? To command a certain kind of elegance, control, power. But below is who we really are during quarantine, okay? In that sweater, and it's schluppy, but it makes her feel good. It makes her feel like who she is. So there is, yeah. So the one on the left is Serena Joy in my little nod to Blade Runner, Sean Young's character. My darling Joe Fiennes on the top left, looking powerful with his Bible, pre-ceremony. And below, my two sweethearts, Eva, I'm from the South again, Kentucky, Eva Carradine, also known as Eva, and Serena Joy, Yvonne Strahovski. You know, they're both, oops, let me move this so I can see the other person. Oh yes, so this was, I think, during my brain. These are all commanders' wives, and I think it's for a party for Eva Carradine's character. And Madeline Brewer is going to be having her baby. So it's kind of a, you know, what do you call it when you have gifts for babies?
A baby shower?
Yeah, that, okay.
The baby shower.
The baby shower.
How did I know that?
I don't know, I'm sad that I didn't, I'm embarrassed. Okay, next photo so I can save myself. That's my dog Georgia from Georgia. Georgia, sorry, that's not supposed to happen. That's my
He's
dog.
welcome to join. We're happy to
That's my dog that I adopted from Atlanta, okay? She wanted to say that's her favorite photo of Serena Joy up top, who is looking like Grace Kelly on purpose. This is, talk about selling. So this was a party where a representative from Mexico came ostensibly to help handmaids, but in reality, it was to buy handmaids as a trade. It's very scary stuff in Gilead. And so I wanted something for Serena Joy that evoked glamour in the way that perhaps a royal family would. But to show her very much alone, which is this photo right before she gives a speech, always to the benefit of her husband. And then the bottom photo, very scary as well. This is all season 1, is her talking with the brilliant, I think, hard to see, Anne Dowd, who is Aunt Lydia, and they're having all of the handmaids line up to choose the ones that can be seen by the delegation from Mexico. And they're hiding the ones who've been maimed, whose hands have been chopped off. I mean, they're horribly abused. And so that's a scary scene that's so pretty. This is the thing about Handmaid's Tale. It's so beautiful and gruesome at the same time. Oh, so Aunt Lydia, wow. And Rita, oh my God, Amanda Brugel. And that amazing baby, look at that baby face. So the cool thing about my job is I try everything on, everything, including the men's stuff. And it's a way, because I'm a very normal shaped woman, and I want actors to never feel like they're constrained in the clothes, that they're like, you know, girdles or something. And so for Aunt Lydia, she was very far away doing The Leftovers in Australia, and she's a dear friend. And I wanted to really give her something that was super powerful, but elegant and still kind of matronly, right? And so this is something that I would wear. That's wool gabardine. It's so many different pieces. And I really designed it with Anne in mind. Anne and tiny bit of nuns, a tiny bit of World War II. This fabric is actually used in Canada to this day for the military. And if you remember, Margaret Atwood played an aunt in season 1, and I was terrified to see what she thought and to meet her. And I remember that this was hanging in her dressing room, her trailer. And I went in to dress her and to show her what everything was. And the first thing she said was, Hitler. And I went, oh my God, exactly. Like, you know, it's like, you never want to hear Hitler, but when it's coming from Margaret Atwood and Handmaid's Tale, you want to hear Hitler. And that's exactly where it came from. Also, some of you know that there's a little contraption, a dickie. I love a good dickie. You know, to change something. Like the idea of the costume design was very forward thinking. In less is more. And so instead of having 1 million garments, maybe the aunts have just 2. One's always being washed, you know, by hand, and the other one's being worn. And so rather than having 1 million aunts costumes, there's a little dickie that's a turtleneck for when it's cold. There's one that's a collar that turns into a very obvious female part when worn, which is what she's wearing. And it was just my way of kind of secretly sliding images of strong feminist theory into the costumes. It was my way of saying, you know, you might be in control, gentlemen, but we don't really believe the control.
And did the directors realize that, or is that your little Easter egg of your own?
I think I may have whispered it once to Bruce. You know what? This is the truth. Sometimes costume designers, including me, can be a little controlling. Maybe that's a bad choice of word. You know, I always feel like, and I think most creative people feel this, it's like, oh, I know best. Don't worry, I got you. But people don't like to hear that all the time, especially when it's a collaboration. So I think in terms of something that strong, I probably, here's the big secret, drum roll please. I probably just made it really pretty, really elegant, and didn't say a word. And they were like, oh, that's stunning. And, you know, Anne, who's amazing and so supportive and collaborative, was like, my God, I never want to take this off. And so I just kind of let her talk. And then later, I said, well, what you have, sister, is a mook around your neck. Go with it. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
What
It's almost time for questions, so I'm just going to put a shout out there for people to send in your questions.
Oh,
but let's just have maybe 2 more slides, and then we'll move over to questions in a second.
All right. This is, you know, poor Alexis Bledel being led away in a jumpsuit, obviously very utilitarian, and my dears below, who are a commander and oh dear, what's the other thing for guys who work for commanders? See, this is when I fail.
Lieutenant?
Nope.
No.
Guardian there. Oh yeah. We can go fast through these. Oh, this is Westworld. This is a really cool actor out of Louisiana who played a character called Slim, James Landry Abaire. And I think he kept that scarf, which is really cool. The thing around his neck, oh, that's Ben Barnes, his first day at a fitting, which is really cool. And hopefully he's texting someone that he loves his costume. Ben Barnes again with Jimmy Simpson, the very first day they met, the very first day in costume. And right after this photo, they took Joan and Nolan, took them out to shoot them as a, you know, duo on screen. The white hat and the black hat. Tandy Newton in my shoes. This happens all the time in fittings. This was just a dress that I thought looked really clean. I think I didn't want to use it because I didn't make it, but ultimately she uses this when she escapes Westworld. I love Tandy. Beautiful samurai look. This is season 1 of Westworld. Ah, Anthony Hopkins. You know what? He said, take a picture so I can show my wife that I look nice. I love, this man is a gem, a brilliant, brilliant creative soul. So this is, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, tell us about how you approach when you're doing a fit-in, when you're dressing someone of that stature, you know, with that history and that heritage. How do you walk into the room? What's your game plan?
Well, you know what's funny? We were talking earlier, some of us at SCAD, about how, you know, this whole thing, this quarantine time has made us realize that we're either really needing people or really shy. I'm really shy when I'm not working. And so with the actors, especially someone like Anthony Hopkins, man, I mean, that's someone we grew up with, right? And he's just Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
And he was like, call me Tony. And I think, you know, ultimately, I think I told him the truth because I just want to be very present and real with the actors. I think I just kind of try to hold I'm not someone who wants to be friends with actors, or, you know, it's not that I'm not impressed. I'm impressed by someone's work and with their work ethic and with who they are as a human being. And so unless you come to an Anthony Hopkins or like a few of the old gems, right? A Dustin Hoffman, a Morgan Freeman, you know, Joan Allen. And so with Anthony, I think I was super quiet and just all about business. And then I told him that I was super shy and that it was really hard some days because, you know, it's like you have to be the Beyonce or the Sasha Fierce. So Sasha has to come out all the time at work, but I'm like secretly really just quiet Beyonce. And he goes, nobody outshines me, nobody. And I remember that was so sweet. Like he does everything to kind of put you at ease. And generally speaking, all of the old guard, the people that, you know, kind of have created the history of Hollywood, they're the kindest and the most respectful. And I think it's because they're rooted in themselves. You know, they're not like, okay, which one's going to make me more sexy? Which one's going to make me more skinny? You know, I mean, Anthony, I think said, hey, I look really young and handsome. Please take a picture for my wife.
We can look at a couple more slides and then we're going to move.
Go right through. This is Westworld. Westworld was, yeah, all about the future. Yep. Westworld. this is an idea for Masters of Sex. All of these things were how to make the 50s and 60s beautifully interesting and couture-like in the way that the 50s and 60s were. And Lizzie Kaplan, I didn't make that. That is a 1930s amazing kimono. Yeah, and that's, 1963, this presidential parade. And there's Michael Sheen. Everything was made. This show really taught me that the best way to get that, there's Caitlin Fitzgerald and Lizzie, two of my favorite outfits. The best way to get what you want across on screen is to make it. Mm-hmm. And, even recently on the show that I've been doing, I had a rather young producer say, "Oh my God, can you just go to Macy's?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you better get somebody else, okay?" Because of course you can always go to Macy's. You can go to Macy's if you want a show that looks like all the other shows that go to Macy's. I don't want to do that. And, anybody can. It's not that it's easy work. It's really kind of closing that creative side and not getting the frame that you really want. And making all the clothes for Masters of Sex, because any clothing that was available from the 50s and 60s was so brightly colored and happy and crazy printed, and it just wasn't the story of Masters of Sex. That's a real story, right? This is a very documentary looking show, albeit with beautiful cashmere two-set for Lizzie Kaplan. And look, Caitlin Fitzgerald was pregnant through most of the show. All of the pregnancy clothes in the 50s were like cute baby dolls. It was like pregnant ladies as babies. Who wants it? That's not the tone of the show. So, oh man.
Well, shall we go to the questions now? Because talking about beautiful things, I know Jacqueline.
Let's do it.
Our fantastic costume student, Jacqueline Black, she's asking about what's going on the wall behind you.
Oh, Jacqueline Black. Okay, so here's
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so you guys are the first, can you see it? Besides my mother, to see this amazing exhibition that's going to happen in Melbourne. It's a triennial, and it's going to happen in December 20. And it's actually an exhibition of physically the costumes. It's a short film, which is being directed by Liam Young, who brought me onto the project. He's a futurist. And it's also going to be a book. So the crazy thing about this pandemic is that, you have to work wherever you can. And so I am in Kentucky in my parents' dining room. How about that? Somewhere where I grew up. And I'm doing what I did when I was 3, which is covering the walls. I still do that. And so, yeah, this is going to be the Ane Crabtree section. Can I show you the most amazing thing really fast?
Please do.
Jacqueline, I just got this today. My amazing assistant, Courtney Mitchell, who was my assistant on The Handmaid's Tale. Look at this. So this is my mom and grandmother. That's my mom in the center. This is going to be an incredible kind of futuristic kimono.
Fantastic.
That's what's happening on the wall.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah.
And can you just tell us a little bit about that personal story you just told us about, though, about what we're actually looking at on the photo there, because it's so beautiful.
So that photo is, it's incredible. So that is my mom and my grandmother and my mom's little sister during the war, which started in Okinawa. They're from Okinawa, and they actually lived in a cave for a short time. And then they ventured far from Okinawa to get away from chaos, from the war. And so this young lady in the photo with her baby, I think maybe was an unmarried woman, which no one talked about at the time. And she took my grandmother and my mother and my aunt in live with them and to hide them. So it's a kind of an amazing thing to interject into the bones of what I'm doing for this exhibition. Yeah.
Okay. And so let's go back to another question on that beautiful moment again there. Kira, this is the opposite end of the spectrum. Kira is asking, what are some examples of instances in which you've questioned your ability to do a job, and what did it teach you to having gone through it?
Wait, say the first part again. I want to make sure I get it right.
Sure. What? So examples of where you might have questioned your own ability to do a job, and how did you work through that?
So that would be this job now. So this job is not, I would say, a costume design job, even though I'm one of 7 artists / designers making costumes for this short film. I questioned my ability for that because the subject matter is so mind-blowing, but real information of what our world will look like in the future. And it's my first time being a curator of the costume element, which is actually a huge job. I had no idea. My other artists are in Sweden and Washington, LA, New York, Kentucky, and it's big. So I think I was like sort of, I've never done that before. How am I going to do that? And how I combat that is there's no time for indecision and lack of confidence. Nobody is interested in that. So you just have to do so much homework every second of the day to be able to follow this very genius person, Liam Young, who is having economists and sociologists and futurists join this project so that we actually are working from a place of absolute reality. So there's lots of homework.
What does that homework look like?
Oh my God, you don't even want to know. So part of it, you do want to know. Part of it is being very organized. So every time you see a black line on the wall, that's another artist, right? There's 7 in total. It's looking up countries that are part of the global South who are going to be at the forefront in the future. I can't tell you the name of this imagined city that I'm designing, but it's all based on reality. It's all based on what's happening today. So think about masks that are something that are part of our everyday lives. You know, it's looking at ways of keeping the body safe, keeping the health, our health safe, but making it beautiful, making it part of the everyday so it doesn't look crazy. You know, it's about thinking about global warming and what kind of fabrics work in the future. It's about what exactly is available in the future. How are bees helping us? What are we eating? Maybe it's algae. So maybe, you know, that pink fabric on the wall, which it was very difficult even a week ago to get any fabric. That fabric is from an orchid plant from where? Walmart, because I couldn't get any fabric, right? And where did I get gloves to act as inspiration for a samurai? Lowe's, okay? You can work anywhere, and really my answer, which is very long-winded, is it's about solving problems. And once you get your mind into solving the problem, instead of the boring thing, which happens to me all the time, which is being scared, nobody's interested in scared. Nobody's interested in you not being prepared. So you just have to solve problems and jump ahead of the game. That's how I combat those moments.
Fantastic. So inspiring for students to hear moments like that.
Thank you.
So let's go to Emily. Emily's asking, what's the difference between working on a show such as Handmaid's Tale and Westworld?
Oh my gosh. You know, so the process is always the same. The process is doing the homework because, and you see on my Instagram, there's homework, #homework is real. It's what I'm looking at every day to be inspired and to be educated as to what the parameters are in the script that I'm working. And the project that I'm doing, the secret one for Apple, it's about looking at different cultures. It's about looking at other things, you know, for the future. The difference between The Handmaid's Tale and Westworld is really just tone of story. You know, Westworld is a dystopia, so is Handmaid's Tale. It's two different writers' view and vision about what the future will look like. And so really, it's about doing the homework, reading Margaret Atwood again, looking at how it was done in the past in a TV show. Also, looking at Michael Crichton. You know, I was a huge fan of Westworld as well, but I didn't want to make the same movie that was already out. I didn't want to make the same movie as, you know, The Handmaid's Tale that was already out. So the only way to do that is to read, find music that inspires you, and, you know, it's all very project applicable. However, the process is always the same, and that is emptying your brain, because you need a lot of bandwidth to take in and memorize scripts and be authentic and respectful to the story and the script.
Similar question. Aiden Sky is asking, what's the difference between getting into film?
Name. Oh, go ahead.
It is great. Aiden Sky. So the difference between film and television for Aiden Sky.
Aiden Sky. So the difference is nothing. No, the difference is really nothing, creatively speaking, except in TV, it's a longer commitment. It's a lot more people to answer to, and it is a nanosecond of time in comparison to film, which gives you a lot more time for the creative process. TV is really an amazing animal, because, I mean, I just did a film with Dee Rees, and it was brilliant to be able to, you know, have the time for conversations and have the time to make clothes. I still want to make clothes, so that's why the process is the same, but I'm given a lot less time to do it in. And so what you find is your own machine, your own creative, technical gut machine is actually moving at a very higher level, because you have to really go with your gut 24/7 and not make mistakes, because those cost money. Yeah.
Well, I've got a question here now, which is a very common one in these kind of moments, which is, it's come in with Becca, and we've also got Naisa, who are both asking a very similar question.
Okay.
How could we get involved in the costume industry today? How do they make that transition from student to working within the costume design industry today?
You know what? I will answer that with a brilliant young lady who's working with me now. Actually, both girls, women, on the East Coast and the West Coast. On the West Coast is Courtney Mitchell, who worked with me on The Handmaid's Tale, and she's a part of this exhibition that I'm doing. And on the East Coast, Ella Erdogan, who is a fashion student who wanted to work with me, and, you know, on Instagram found me. I do write back to people that ask me questions on Instagram. You know, I was a really shy student, so I remember finding Diana Vreeland's phone number, or at least her son's, in a phone book back in the day when we had phone books in New York, and I never called. And I think about every student that's reached out to me unabashedly, bravely, confidently saying, hey, how can I get in this business, or can I work with you? Often, you know, when I'm not working, I have some more time to answer. When I'm working, if you don't hear from me, it's just insane. But I think reach out to your heroes. That is something I wish I had done more of when I was younger. And that's kind of a good initial start. That's how Courtney was someone who was going to work as an assistant type, a PA type on The Handmaid's Tale, and ended up being a genius. Thank you, Courtney. And, you know, working with me on different levels. The way you can get in is to send your resume. That's the most obvious, but have the work to back it up, and have two other things. Have your wits about you, have the intellect to back up your work, and to not be lazy. Okay, there's three. And to have manners, because that will make you stand out. To write a well-written letter to someone handwritten, I always say, handwrite your letters, always say thank you, immediately send the thank you after you've met the person, even via email. That will stand out because so many people are just running and they just want, right? They just want the job. They don't care how they get there. How you get there is everything. How you stand out is everything. You have to have the integrity of a brain, of your own creativity in order to send the resume in the first place. Courtney did that. Ella did that. She was a fashion person and I was like, this is a really hard job in New York. It's global. Am I crazy to hire someone who, Ella, if you're listening, I love you. And I don't think this way anymore. But I was worried about hiring a fashion student as opposed to a costume student. Guess what? Ella is so genius. Ella can make the transition. She is now working on this art project. It's all about what you're bringing to the person. Yeah. What are you going to offer to help that person? It's not about me helping you. I'm going to give you the job. That's the help. I'm going to give you the exposure. Courtney and Ella are now going to be in a triennial show. They just started, okay? Ella a few months ago working with me, Courtney 2 years ago. That's huge. So the answer is, what sacrifices will you make to be able to give something to that designer that you want to work for? If the answer is, I can't think of anything, my answer is, I don't think you want to be here. Okay? I sound like Debbie Allen in Fame. That's an old show for those of you who are young. But it's the truth. You got to stand out. Yeah.
And do sewing skills, you know, you've talked about the need to make, but are you looking for designer makers? Is that who you like to work with?
You know what? So we're looking for everything. I myself am someone who studied art and who studied fashion. I failed. I didn't graduate from either place, but I have something else to offer. So, yeah. You know, I do hire, like on this, we're hiring brilliant mask makers. And also on the TV show that I'm working on. You know, we have people in 4 different countries, actually more, you know, different groups of people who are making the clothes, dyeing the clothes, you know, being on set. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking for all of it because most shows today are about building worlds. So we need a lot of people, but they all have to be good and they all have to be able to bring something unusual. The stakes are higher, you know, these days. There's so much content. Everyone's trying to be the best. Everyone's trying to win awards. So the makeup, the army that makes up that team has to be able to have the same makeup and the same intellect and the same creativity to elevate themselves to the next level. It's essential.
We've got time probably for one last question.
Oh.
And I know time's gone so fast today, but this is a good question. So, you know, let's see where it takes us. It says, how does it feel that your costume, this is Dawn Mostow. How does it feel that your costume designs have entered popular culture and political discourse? For example, women's rights advocates wearing Handmaid's uniforms to protest, or on the flip side, the Kardashians and Jenners throwing a Handmaid's Tale Gilead themed birthday bash.
Yeah. Oh, Dawn, you've opened up a giant conversation at the end.
I thought that was a good one to close with.
Dawn, you might go into politics, I think. So listen, what do they say? You always want people talking about you, right? You always want people referencing your work, or not. You know, for me, The Handmaid's Tale became its own thing, its own entity. You know, yes, it's in the Smithsonian, it's in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. It's made an impact hugely for women's rights. That I am most proud of. Do I need to see it on the Kardashians? Maybe not. You know, they do their own thing so well. So listen, everybody translates society in a different way, including myself. I'm not right. When I was a kid and I was doing my own version of Gautier in the East Village, and it looked probably real bad, and I had passed Gautier, and he looked at me and I was like, oh God, there's nobody I want to see right now. It's Gautier. I don't want to see him. So everyone peeps each other. Everyone gets inspired. all I can tell you, Dawn, is all of it will make sense when you're 100 years old and you look back. For now, all I can say is I respect the process, and I count myself lucky. And I every day, I'm grateful for the ability to be here and to be able to have a voice, most especially for women's rights, 100%. I mean that.
Well, we really appreciate that. Thank you for fighting the power and doing that for us, Anne. We appreciate it. And as you can see, it's inspired so many students today, and your work will continue to. So thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it.
I love you guys at SCAD. Thank you for having me. I can't believe the time went, but thanks for being a part of this very important conversation. I hope it's helpful.
Thank you. And hopefully it'll be one that we can continue again in the future, maybe in Savannah if we're lucky, you know.
I love Savannah. Okay.
Well,
yes.
You mentioned you was the best Girl Scout cookie seller, so you need to get to Savannah. We'll put it to the test. We'll see what we can do with that there. But just before we say goodbye to everyone, we just want to say congratulations to the graduating class of 2020. It's your commencement on Saturday, so we hope you have an absolutely fantastic time. We're incredibly proud of you. I know Anne will join me in celebrating that. But also one last note, and that's to say, keep an eye on your SCAD email. There'll continue to be SCAD Guest and Gusto events over the break and over the summer. So hopefully we'll see you next time. But thanks so much, Anne. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks, Carl. Okay.
Thank you.